evening. Good to have you with us at the 9 p.m. edition of the Urban Debate. Viewers, one more time, there seems to be a tug of war brewing between the Delhi government and the centre, with the police in between the Aap government and the Delhi police. Unfortunately, it's a crucial issue which is at stake here. The fight is about the appointment of lawyers for the series of cases related to the Delhi riots that unfolded in February 2020. The two sides, the Delhi police and the Aap government, cannot agree on who should be representing their side in the courtrooms to fight these cases. And they're fighting over appointment of lawyers. What is at stake is justice in these over 700 riot cases. Riots that engulfed our national capital just a few months ago. Riots that destroyed lives and homes and families who got displaced and are waiting for justice. But unfortunately, what's panning out is another round of politics. Now, let me tell you what it is that the two sides are saying about the appointment of lawyers. The Delhi police claims that the state government is blocking their right to appoint lawyers, their right to choose lawyers. But the Delhi government says no, it is the government's right to pick a lawyer representing them in this case. The Delhi police says Delhi government is trying to shield Tahir Hussain, one of the Aap leaders who is now in this case an accused. The Aap government itself, the Aap party, had distanced themselves from Tahir Hussain, but they say the investigation and the prosecution has to be separate and the government has a voice in it. Delhi police says that the government is trying to scuttle this probe, and the Aap government is saying no, it is our responsibility to ensure that there is a fair trial. Even the court has observed that there is a need to follow the norms and process and ensure that there is a fair trial, which is why we want to have a say in who should be appointed. Let me also tell you how sensitive this case is. Quick refresher of what happened in February 2020. The riots unfolded in the streets of the national capital from February 23rd to February 29th, are largely concentrated in northeast Delhi. 53 people lost their lives, over 350 people were injured in these deadly riots that took place, one of the worst we've seen in recent times in the national capital. Over 10,000 emergency calls were made during that 1 week of horrific violence that unfolded. 122 homes, 322 shops, and over 300 vehicles were completely burned down. There are over 700 different cases linked to this, which are currently under investigation. In some, charge sheets have been filed. In others, investigation continues. This is how important the story is. And what we are staring at is a fight over the public prosecutors and the special public prosecutors who should be representing and making the argument over what the Delhi police has found in this case. Why is that happening? Is the Aap government really implying that the lawyers who had been chosen by the Delhi police would not have represented a fair trial? But that's one of the questions I have in mind. Let's say good evening to the panelists who are joining us right now. Anila Singh, national spokesperson for the BJP. Rani Srivastava, Aap supporter, a founding member of the Aam Aadmi Party actually. Amit Mahajan, advocate with the Delhi High Court. And Ananya Bhardwaj, senior assistant editor of ThePrint, who's been tracking this case very, very closely. But first time I want to go across to Ravi Srivastava. Ravi, is that the implication? Is that what it is? That the Aap government doesn't have any faith in the lawyers who were named? Because I can see some really big names who've made a career out of fighting cases in the courtrooms.
Tanvi, what LG had suggested, the accountant, that AG, Mr. Tushar Mehta, Aman Lekhi and his team. Against that, Arvind Kejriwal has said that they have got another 6 senior lawyers who can handle this case. See, this is the practice that if a lawyer is suggested by the agency which has probed the case, it will not be called a fair trial anyway. And what people want, what Delhi government wants, there should be a fair trial of this particular unfortunate riot in which 53 lives were lost, and a lot of people have been, lost their properties and miserably. Now the fact is that Honorable High Court Justice Suresh Kumar has already made a comment on that observation, and he said that the whole investigation appears to be biased, and it appears that it is being done to favor one party only. So in view of that, Arvind Kejriwal has suggested that we have got another set of 6 senior Supreme Court advocates who will handle this case. I mean, a panel of advocates who can handle this case in the High Court, and they can argue for that. Now, this is what is the rift between the LG and the Delhi government. Now, LG repeatedly takes shelter under that section 239AA4, and he says that, he has the superiority over the Delhi government and he can impose his order on the Delhi government, which is incorrect. Because in 2018 judgment by Honorable Supreme Court, it is clearly said that rarest of the rare case only the LG will prevail upon the Delhi government. In all other cases, and this case is not the rarest of the rare anyway. So Delhi government is well within its right to appoint a panel of advocates and see to it that a fair trial is done. Now, I'll add one more thing. Why I am saying the word fair trial again and again, we all have seen that how the forensics was done in this Delhi police investigation in the Delhi riots. You have seen somebody picking up, I have seen even the media reporter picking up some petrol bomb bottles, some clothes, some flags, some bomb or something of that sort, and they were touching everything by hand. I do not know what kind of investigation has been done by the Delhi police, and Delhi government has got a full right to suspect that there is an attempt to make the case one-sided and see to it that the culprits are not brought to book anyway.
But I don't understand, Mr. Ravi Srivastava, is the Delhi government saying that if Tushar Mehta represents this case, the Solicitor General represents this case, a man who is responsible for the most important cases for the government of India, that there will not be a fair trial? Is the Delhi government implying that Aman Lekhi, ASG in our country, represents this case? There will not be a fair representation of the facts? Is Mr. Kejriwal really asserting the fact that Chetan Sharma, S.V. Raju, 2 other big names, Assistant Solicitor General, if they represent this case and make their arguments, there won't be a fair trial?
Tanvi, as I said you in the beginning, it is not a question of suspecting anybody's capability or competence for seeing the trial. What is the contention of Delhi government is that these people have been provided by the government, by the Delhi police as their panel of advocates. And that is the agency which has probed the entire incident, because Delhi government had demanded that the entire investigation should be done by a retired High Court judge, because there were suspicions right from the beginning that the trial is not going to be fair. And this has already come out in the charge sheet that if people of the one particular sect or the one particular religion have been booked, then those who are the sufferers, and both the sides suffered for that matter, but it appears that the probe was directing in the one direction and it was appearing to be biased. That's why Delhi government suggested that we have got a set of another senior advocates the panel which can take up this particular probe.
Okay, let me bring in Anila Singh. Anila Singh, would you like to respond to what Ravi Srivastava is saying, that basis what has happened so far, the Delhi government wants their own set of lawyers?
Tanvi, I can say one thing here to start with. There is a saying in Hindi, "Choro ko sare nazar aate hain chor." So the brutal, cruel, disgusting 50 shades of Arvind Kejriwal and his coterie, we can see that. They are here not to give justice to all those who had suffered during Delhi riots. They are here to protect Tahir Hussain. They are here to protect Amanatullah Khan. And whole the world had seen, whole the world has watched the way Tahir Hussain was in coordination with the senior leaders of Aam Aadmi Party. They were directing him and he was in action. Not only throwing petrol bombs, not only slaughtering one IB officer, but we very well know that 53 lives have been lost in this Delhi riots. What is in Rahul Mehta, the person under whom Rahul Mehta, the person under whom Mr. Arvind Kejriwal, he wants that he and his team should fight the cases in the court, in High Court and Supreme Court. I mean, the luminaries, which, the panel of luminaries, which has been suggested by Delhi police, I mean, he is not accepting that. Them, though they have got history of successful cases which they have fought, like the cases which they fought have made history, legal history, and he and his portray saying, "नहीं, हमको इनके साथ केस नहीं लड़ना है." Cases made like they may be biased towards some other people, and they can get to the task Mr. Tahir Hussain and other people who are associated with him and Aam Aadmi Party in Delhi riots. But the thing is, why not Arvind Kejriwal? Arvind Kejriwal is coming forward and telling what is wrong with Mr. Tushar Mehta, what is wrong with Mr. Amit Mahajan, what is wrong with all other senior lawyers which has been provided to them, and he is saying no, Mr. Rahul Mehta and his team is going to fight in the court. I just want to say here, the only intention which I observe is Mr. Kejriwal, for Mr. Kejriwal, I think vote bank politics dominates on other things. Other things are like you should give justice to the people who have suffered because of these riots. The justice should be given to all those people. They suffered not only in Delhi riots, but before that we saw that how the CAA protest went on, then Delhi riots, and then other things. So definitely Aam Aadmi Party's intention is nullified, and this is what not only I as a common citizen of this country is observing, but everybody is seeing that Arvind Kejriwal is not standing fairly.
Okay. Okay, I have two experts on the panel who I want to bring in right now. But Ravi Srivastava, 30 seconds to you because you wanted to make a point and respond to this. And then I go across to our experts who know this case very well. Yeah.
Yes, I just want to tell Anila Singh that yes, your intention is to save the likes of Mr. Kapil Mishra, Anurag Thakur, the central minister, and the member parliament Pravesh Verma, who are making all kind of provocative speeches and who were shouting on the top of their voice, "Goli Maro." Those kind of slogans they were raising, they were making the processions, and they were fueling the fire during the Delhi riots over there. She should know that. That's the reason you want to bring the Solicitor General and ASG. You want to save those people actually. That's your motive, that's your objective.
Okay, let me actually bring in our experts right now, and I want to first go across to Ananya because she's also been closely tracking this case. Ananya, and for our viewers to understand, this is not a tussle that has just exploded now. This has actually been going on since April. The back and forth between the two sides on who should be representing the case has gone on since April. Help our viewers understand how have we reached this point.
Tanvi, it is quite sad, in fact, that we have gotten down to, this tussle when so many lives, as you pointed out rightly, were lost in these riots. In fact, I was there myself at this spot and saw how goons went around with lathis and destroyed public property, and killings were happening, and police was just standing as bystanders. And in fact, I myself went up to a policeman to ask them for help, but then they were standing helpless because there was not enough force. So 72 hours of complete rampage in Northeast Delhi, and there was no police in sight, no force in sight, and so much happened. And after that, now when we have reached the trial stage, we are fighting about who is going to take up the case. As you rightly pointed out about the lawyers that the center has suggested, Mr. LG has suggested, of course, Arvind Kejriwal is going to say that these lawyers are not credible enough. We are not here raising questions on the credibility of Mr. Mehta or the other lawyers, but we are here saying that the Delhi government is pointing out that there are serious questions that has been raised by the trial courts, the district courts itself, on the Delhi police probe hinging towards one side. That is because a lot of bails were granted to people because court pointed out that in several cases the evidence of arrest was not enough. In many cases, it was also pointed out that mere disclosures were treated as evidence. One case I would like to point out here is in one of the cases, criminal conspiracy was not pressed against a group of Hindu men who were on a WhatsApp chat discussing about how to brutally murder some Muslim men. So why was criminal conspiracy not pressed against those people, while in another case, in Rajdhani school case, we saw that criminal conspiracy was pressed against one of the owners of the school just because he sent Muslim kids back home a few hours early that day. So when we look at these sections that have been pressed against the Muslims and against the Hindus, we see that the probe is in fact tilting on one side, and that is what the court has also pointed out in different hearings, and that is why bail has been granted in many cases of crime branch that are being probed. So it is right for the government to say that they should be allowed to pick lawyers, because if say if the probe is tilting towards one side, it is only fair that a panel of lawyers which are who are neutral be allowed to represent the Delhi police case in this matter.
Yes, and like you said, that is a very important aspect. Questions that have been raised on the way the investigation has been done and what has been submitted in the court as, part of evidence, even for bail hearings. Let me also point it out to our viewers that this actually started in April. In first week of April is when the tussle really began. Then on 24th of April, the Delhi police proposed a second list of prosecutors, but that proposal was shot down. On 23rd of May, the Lieutenant Governor wrote to the government saying that there is no reason to doubt the lawyers who have already been selected by the Delhi police and we should just go ahead with that. On 29th of May, LG invokes constitutional powers and refers the matter to the president. On 27th of June, the president actually approved the list that had been sent by the Delhi police, which was then forwarded by the Lieutenant Governor. And there were 11 special public prosecutors who were there in that list. That was round one. Then there was a round two that started on 18th of July when Lieutenant Governor gave Kejriwal government 7 days to clear the names that had been proposed this time by the Delhi police, and that's when the second round of back and forth really began. Now imagine this. Again, I will reiterate. Over 50 lives lost, hundreds of people lost their homes, went through so much of trauma, week-long violence, the worst we've seen in the recent times, over 700 cases, and here we are for months and weeks, just simply arguing about who should argue these cases in the courtroom. Mr. Khemka, how do we solve this problem to ensure that there is timely justice given? If the lawyers, if we don't know who's going to be presenting the case to in the courtrooms, how will we ever proceed?
Yeah, Tanvi, I will not like to get into the political slugfest, and let me tell you, first of all, there is a prosecution department in Delhi, which is headed by the Director of Prosecution. It consists of the prosecutors who are experienced prosecutors, who are career prosecutors, and some of them have several decades of experience. Now, first of all, I don't know why those prosecutors who are already there on the panel or are already the part of the government, why can't they represent? If the question has to be asked as to why these big names or these big lawyers are not good enough, then the question also has to be asked that why that experienced department of prosecution is not good enough. Now that is the first thing. Second thing is that Supreme Court in the judgment between Delhi government and central government in February 2019 said that it is the government has to be represented by the Lieutenant Governor. However, while appointing the public prosecutors, it has to act on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers of the state. So, whichever person is appointed as public prosecutor, it has to be by the consent of both the parties, the Lieutenant Governor and the government both. The Council of Ministers also has to approve of it. The third thing, let me tell you, is that it is not the question whether these very, very big names are competent or not. They are no doubt competent. They are very good lawyers, excellent lawyers. The question is that now for at least 3 to 4 decades, all the attorney generals and the solicitor generals or any of these government lawyers who are appointed, they are political. They have all become political appointments. So you cannot really say that a lawyer who may be a very competent lawyer, but he still may have political inclinations. He may still be a political appointment. So the other person or the other party is bound to doubt the political inclination of that lawyer. It is not the question of doubting the competence of that lawyer. So I think both the chief minister and the governor, the lieutenant governor, must sit together. It should not be brought into public all these, and it should not be made so cheap to look at. In fact, one can always decide on these issues. These are not very difficult issues to be decided unless one of the parties has some malafide intention or something up their arm. So this is, I don't think these are the matters on which these kind of public slugfest is required, or acquisitions and counter acquisitions.
Okay.
They do not.
But Mr. Khemka, by that logic, then won't how does anybody then believe that the lawyers that the AAP government actually picks are going to do a fair job? By again saying that we are not questioning the skills or the intent of the lawyers, but it's the same. If we are not going to have faith in the lawyers chosen by the Delhi police, then why should anybody have faith in what the AAP government chooses?
Of course, you are right, Tanvi, that it is always going to be doubtful when there are political appointments. That is why I started by saying that why not that prosecution department, which has very, very experienced prosecutors. They do this job in and out. They conduct trials in and out every day. Thousands of trials these people have conducted. They are very experienced people, and they are all on the government rolls. There is no question of their appointment. They are not political appointees. They have been appointed on merits. So why not first of all go ahead with those people only, unless one of them is found not performing pretty well. Now that is my point of view. I am saying that there is a prosecution department of Delhi. They're headed by a director prosecution. It has people with decades of experience in conducting trials. Then why not go with them? And I think, unless there is an occasion arises, if an occasion arises where you think that no, some senior is required or a senior person should come, I mean, it is very difficult if three of the ASGs and one as Solicitor General, if they will start conducting trials, I think it would be a very difficult situation for the country. They have so much on their hands. They have so much of work to do in Supreme Court and High Courts. So I don't know how they will find time to conduct the trials. They are absolutely wonderful lawyers. Nobody can doubt that Mr. Aman Lekhi or Mr. Chetan Sharma or Mr. Mahajan, they are not good lawyers. Nobody can doubt that. They are fantastic lawyers. But the question is that why the ASGs or SG are required to conduct these trials?
From what I understand, the conversation was because there are so many cases, there has to be some kind of a, expertise that needs to be brought in to ensure that all cases are being properly tracked, followed up and presented in the courtrooms. There are across multiple courts, from trial courts to high court, over 700 of these FIRs that have been filed. In some cases, charge sheets have been done. And so let's bring in the big guns. Let's bring in the special public prosecutors and ensure that a fair job is done. But for some reason, the both sides are not now able to agree on who those big names really need to be. Before I go back to our political representatives, very quickly, from Ananya, like you pointed out, Even the High Court had expressed displeasure at the way the cops had filed a separate plea for bail cancellation, a few other issues that were raised. Take our viewers through that. It's very important to know what has happened since the riots unfolded, since you reported and we reported on what was happening on ground. How much of that has actually translated into a charge sheet and been presented to the court?
Tanvi, if you go through the cases, the FIRs, you would see that multiple FIRs read almost the same. There's a lot of, repetition in the way that the FIRs have been written. So it almost seems scripted. Then when you go and read the charge sheets, it also, give you a sense that it's somewhat, the probe is tilted, because when in the charge sheet the police are talking about charges against the Muslim men, it's in a much more aggressive tone than when they talk about the charges against the Hindu men who have been booked. Although crime branch, and this is a very convoluted investigation, and it is being looked into by several agencies of Delhi police. In fact, special cell, crime branch, local police all have separate cases registered, and they are probing the same incident, from different angles. So which is why it becomes more convoluted. But what here we are looking at is that even though the police have claimed that they have made equal number of arrests against Hindus and Muslims, if you analyze the charge sheets and if you analyze the FIRs, you'll find that the charges that have been pressed against the Muslims are much more graver than the charges pressed against the Hindus. In fact, that is what will pan out in the trial now when the bail applications are filed. In fact, they have also found that a lot many Hindus have been already granted bail because the sections that were put against them were less graver when it came to in the investigation. So even though they have made it appear to be like a fair investigation, arresting equal number of people from both communities, when you dive deeper into the sections and the law and what charges have been put against them in the FIRs, you can see for yourself.
Okay, thank you for actually that deep analysis. And one very important aspect that you raised, that many of these FIRs simply look like a cut, copy, paste job. Now, if that's the kind of follow-up investigation that has been done, then questions should be raised during the trial time. So, Anila Singh, the Delhi government says that we have rejected the selection of lawyers because we want a free and fair trial. We want an independence between the investigation and prosecution. For these very reasons that have been even spoken about in the courts. Courts have raised an issue about the kind of investigation that have been done. And so we want an impartial panel of lawyers. So why don't we just let that be and at least look at the suggestions that they are making?
When they say free and fair trial, I really fail to understand what they want to say, what they want to convey. I know one thing, that Mr. Kejriwal and his portrait, like their conscience, their morality, their right to duty, everything has been crushed under the appeasement politics. When they say free and fair trial, do they think that these legal luminaries which have been provided on the panel, and they're not able to do the job properly? So he is putting huge question mark on whole of the legal system here. Rejecting the Delhi police lawyers panel, the Delhi government has shown that it is prepared to go to any extent to protect the rights accused, including its leaders. This is what Mr. Kejriwal is doing. It is written right on the wall. Anybody can read it. So I just have a request to Mr. Rani Srivastava that you should go and tell your leader, Mr. Arvind Kejriwal, that can he face Ratan Lal's family or the families of 53 people?
You better go and tell Mr. Amit Shah to know that what Delhi police has done. Tanvi, can I come in? Can I respond now, please?
1 minute, Mr. Srivastava. Ravi Srivastava, let her finish. Let her finish, please. Yes, Anila Singh.
Got crushed by your leaders. This is the reality, sir. And today you are quoting free and fair trial. Do you understand the meaning of free and fair trial? For you, free and fair trial is what Amanullah Khan did. What this Hussain, he did. That is the thing. That is the fair thing. This is what I am saying. Can your leader face the people, all those 53 who lost their lives, and all the police personnel, like they were injured, and few of them, couple of them, they lost their lives, and you're talking about free and fair trial.
Tanvi,
Tanvi,
can I
can I
just
respond now? He has got
I
nothing
don't
else
know
to say.
no, 1 minute. Anila Singh, now I have lost you. I don't understand what you're what is the point that you're making. Delhi police people being injured has nothing to do with the kind of investigation the Delhi police has to do and the way they have to present their case to ensure justice is done in the riots cases and the guilty are brought to book. Now that's the point that we are making. I don't want to sit here and debate about what happened and unfolded in those 7 days on the streets of the national capital. A lot of that has already been done. Yes, Mr. Ravi Srivastava, respond to what she is saying before I go across to Mr. Khemka
Tanvi,
for one more question.
let me let me tell you that first of all, what Anila Singh is saying, she should know that Kapil Mishra was standing with the hands on the shoulder of the ACP when the riots were on. Such was the situation. Let me tell you on record on a national channel that Delhi police has done a shoddy job in the investigation in the Delhi riots. It is absolutely biased and one-sided. And that's the reason that what Mr. Khemka was saying is absolutely right. What prosecutors are competent people. But what prosecutor will do? Prosecutor goes on the evidence which has been collected by the police, and that is what he is going to defend before the honorable court. If the probe itself is shoddy, the forensics is not proper, the police is trying to bury and conceal the evidences, you can imagine that person's statement has been converted into a charge sheet. Such was the observation by the honorable trial court, that his statement given by a victim was taken as a charge sheet over there. So such is the case. What kind of justice you expect? And this is why the reason that Arvind Kejriwal is asking for a free and fair trial, because he knows that this police is working only on the diktats and the directives of Mr. Amit Shah. And he will not do anything fair for the people of Delhi who have lost their precious lives. So that's the reason that he is asking for that the different set of lawyers should be there.
Okay. What the police's investigation is. Yes, but whatever the police has done and investigated, that's at the end of the day, that's what the lawyers have to present. So, Mr. Khemka, I don't understand this. Even if it's an allegation and if there is a truth to this allegation of a shoddy investigation and a biased investigation, and there are many who've raised these questions of a biased investigation as well. How can another set of lawyers really change that? They, at the end of the day, will argue basis what the police has found, has recorded or hasn't recorded.
You are absolutely right. If the investigation was shoddy according to the Aam Aadmi Party or the people who are involved in the matter, who have been made accused, they should have gone to the court for appointment of CBI or SIT. Why were they sitting quiet for so long? Why are they not taking up that matter with the court and asking for a CBI inquiry or investigation or an investigation by an SIT or something like that? You are absolutely right. Just by changing the lawyers, you are not going to make any changes. But the point still remains that after all, those career prosecutors who are on the rolls of the government already, who have decades of experience, why the LG finds them not to be competent enough to represent the Delhi police? What is the necessity to appoint special public prosecutors or such senior people who have so much on their hand to do? They are responsible. Solicitor General of India is responsible for the whole country, not only for Delhi. He's supposed to. I can understand some of the ASGs being spared for this job, but how can the Solicitor General find time to conduct a trial? If a murder trial takes place, it goes on from morning till evening. So you have almost about 6 to 8, 7 hours of continuous hearing when the murder cases are going on. So how these senior lawyers are going to find time for that? I'm surprised. I don't know.
I'm completely out of time. I understand the point that you're raising, but somewhere we have to find a solution. We cannot afford to not get justice, to delay this case and the hearings just because the Delhi government and the central government, the Delhi government and the Lieutenant Governor or the Delhi police cannot agree on who should be representing in this case. Far too much time gets wasted in this. A good set of lawyers need to strongly argue a good investigation that one hopes has been done. Otherwise, it will be up to the courts to really scrutinize this investigation and ask the right questions. Thank you to all of our panelists who are joining us. But I wanted to talk about this issue simply for this reason, viewers. This is a riot that claimed 53 lives. Over 120 homes were burnt down. Over 300 shops were gutted in fires. There was chaos and fear on the streets of the national capital. And allegations even against the Delhi police, even at that time, of the way they were cracking down and a biased nature of their crackdown. Now, all of that needs to be looked into. And justice needs to be done not by seeing it through a prism of religion or political affiliation, but purely on a criminal basis, purely from a human angle. And that is how we will achieve justice, not via politics and not via communalism. Thank you so much for joining us on this conversation.